Hey folks, welcome to The Drink Tank, a very special production brought to you by The Unusual Suspects. I'm your host for the afternoon, Connor Walcott, staff writer for VT.com. With me making her on-camera debut for The Unusual Suspects is producer Kelley. Welcome to the beautiful Valuetainment Cigar Lounge and Bar. You're usually here running the camera equipment for us while we're over there on the couches, but it's nice to have you on this side of the screen so everyone can get to see you for the first time.
Thank you so much.
So today, we are talking about the latest developments in the Boeing saga. As many of you, I'm sure, remember, that company has been not doing so hot lately. The last 6 to 8 months, there have been a lot of problems. Mid-air door plug blowouts, public scrutiny, congressional hearings, the CEO resigned and now has to go testify. Things are getting rough for Boeing. Their stock isn't doing too hot either. But whistleblowers seem to be dropping just as fast as Boeing stock lately. And today, we just got a report that yet another Boeing whistleblower has passed away. And there are a lot of questions. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you're new here, hit the bell notification so you never miss an episode, and you can keep up with everything going on here in the Drink Tank and over there on the couches for the main Unusual Suspects. We got some good episodes coming up for you soon, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out. Kelley, what do we know about the latest thing that's happening?
We know too much now. So Josh Dean passed away today. He was a quality auditor for Spirit Aerosystems, which provides parts for Boeing planes. Specifically, Josh Dean went into the hospital about 2 weeks ago because he has trouble breathing. Fast forward, he contracts MRSA, which is a common staph infection that you can get from being intubated. So he was intubated, he got MRSA, and then all of a sudden his infection just progressed astronomically, and he needed to be put on an ECMO machine, which is a machine that basically like operates outside of your body for your heart and lungs and does those functions outside of your body and like takes your blood out and cleans it to try to stop that infection. Did not work. And then I believe he was in a coma, suffered a stroke, and then today he died. So within 2 weeks he went from having difficulty breathing to a severe infection that killed him. And guess what? He's only 45 years old. And everyone in his life reports that he has a very healthy lifestyle. He was a very healthy person. He was a fit person. He looked great. So, and now he's dead.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm no medical expert, but it seems like strokes and lung infections for healthy 45-year-olds, that doesn't happen all that often. I know that the staph infection you mentioned is pretty common in hospital patients who are intubated or get IVs. It's when the equipment's not cleaned properly or the hands of the people doing it are dirty. On the outside of your body, it causes sores and that kind of thing, but when it gets inside, it's in the bloodstream, makes it even harder to breathe. So for someone who went in with breathing difficulty, that was a huge problem. But it's a truly tragic thing. His aunt who was with him described it as a brutal process. At one point, the doctors were talking about maybe having to amputate his arms and legs to stop the infection, but before they could even do that, he was gone. Genuinely a tragedy. He seems like a good, hard-working guy, and nobody deserves to go out like that. Yeah. So why are we talking about Josh Dean today? It's because of what he did for a living prior to falling ill. We have reports on all this and a lot more of the details we'll be discussing today at VT.com that you can go check out. We'll have links in the description for that. But what did he do prior to this?
So again, he was a quality auditor for Spirit Aerosystems, which provides parts to Boeing.
Not Spirit Airlines. We just want to clarify. Yes, they're unaffiliated.
Yes. Not affiliated.
They're not that airline.
I fly Spirit. I love you. But not Boeing. So he was a quality auditor for Spirit Aerosystems, which provides parts for Boeing planes, and specifically he was working on 737 MAX planes. So he had reported to his superiors that there was a lot of steps being missed. There were parts that weren't being audited properly and could be subject to fatigue earlier than they should be. Which puts a lot of lives in danger if these parts are getting put on planes. So he said something And, he started getting cut out of meetings, and they started treating him poorly. They punctured a hole in his tire outside of work, and that might be somebody else's. That might not be Josh Dean's.
A lot of these came from various Labor Department complaints that they filed, and basically the company was retaliating against him. They were pushing him out, and then eventually they fired him.
They fired him, and so his lawsuit was against Spirit AeroSystems for firing him unfairly, as retaliation for him reporting those lapses in quality control.
He filed a report with the FAA as well, and that's where a lot of this came to light in part of that lawsuit. And just to clarify, remember back when that Alaska Airlines flight had the door plug blowout?
Who can forget?
Yeah, everybody knows that. That's what got the ball rolling on this. Spirit AeroSystems manufactured that door plug. And there was a separate report that came out a few months ago of the investigation into that, found, quote, misdrilled holes in that door and a bunch of other door plugs. There were missing bolts, they didn't drill things correctly, the parts did not line up, and yet they just attached it to the side of a plane and had it take off with a full load of people on it.
So it's just an extreme example of what can happen when A, your parts aren't up to standard, and B, you have services happening that aren't up to standard. You endanger an entire plane, which is over 300 people. You endanger entire plane's lives, and then depending on where they land or crash into, it's just very scary to think that a plane that you could be on is not safe for you to fly anymore.
And fortunately no one was killed in that incident, but we've had a lot of other incidents that could have been fatal as well. There's tires falling off the landing gear, cracks in the windows, bits of the wing hanging off and basically strapped on by duct tape that people are now noticing.
Yeah.
And it's because of all these things that now anytime you get on a plane, you're looking for these things now. It's the people,
anytime you feel turbulence, you're like, oh my gosh, please no, please no.
The people who are supposed to be taking care of this aren't.
No.
So just like with terrorism, where the TSA doesn't do anything, it's passengers being alerted to it. Passengers are now finding defects in the plane and pointing it out, and that's what's continuing to keep the ball rolling on this. Just for example, my wife and I went on a trip a little while ago, and we had a connecting flight and then the flight getting us to our destination. Both times, sit down. There's a pamphlet right in the back of the seat. What to know about a Boeing 737? It's like, oh, great.
God.
So I'm so glad I've been paying attention to this. She's just sitting there with her headphones in, blissfully unaware, because she doesn't watch the news. But I'm like, well, this might very well be the last thing we do on this earth, but at least the peanuts were nice.
Oh gosh, I'm flying out tomorrow, and I literally looked for what airline I was flying so that I didn't fly a 737. I was like, please, no, please.
Yeah. That would be very nice if they would tell you what kind of plane you're getting on first, but I think they're starting to cover that up now that they know. But anyway, back to Josh Dean. Truly a tragedy that he went out like that. It's a brutal way to go, and it's very unfortunate, and our hearts go out to his family. Yeah. But one guy by himself passing away in the hospital from a pretty common infection isn't worthy of much international attention like it's getting. So why is it that this guy in particular is worthy of an episode of this show and of articles and write-ups, and what ties that together?
Because it's all so familiar. Only a month ago, John Barnett passed away under mysterious circumstances. Yet another Boeing whistleblower. He was a quality control manager at Boeing for 737 planes, and he also reported to his superiors that services putting together these parts and substandard parts were not being done correctly.
I think at one point he said they were going to the scrap heap to get extra stuff if they ran out of parts. He
did mention that, and he specifically mentioned Spirit AeroSystems in some of his testimony. So same situation where you have two quality auditors or managers that are performing checks that keep us safe. These safety standards and procedures are being dropped, and the ball is dropped, so we're not safe anymore. And they're calling it out to their superiors, and they both experienced retaliation from their companies. Boeing started icing John Barnett out, also known as Swamp Dog. So they started icing him out, and then they fired him. So his lawsuit was against Boeing for firing him unjustly in retaliation and for trying to smear his reputation. What's so also interesting about both gentlemen is that they both had just recently completed their testimony. They're both represented by the same lawyers, Robert Turkowitz and Brian Knowles.
I believe we had Mr. Turkowitz on the PBD podcast not too long ago. You will have a link to that in the description as well, where Patrick asked him a lot about the details of this, because it's not every day that a guy is like 2/3 of the way through a testimony in good spirits and confident about where he's going, and then shoots himself in his truck the next morning.
That is exactly how he died, and it's even more shocking because he had gone through 7 years of this lawsuit, and he got an appeal approved, and he was starting to win. Like, his testimony was going to allow others to be deposed as well. So, and he had just finished, like, the biggest chunk of it, and he was supposed to finish that morning that they found his body. And nobody believes that he would kill himself. He wasn't the kind of guy. One of his neighbors said he would never kill himself. His family does not believe the note that they found. We don't know yet what was on the note in the car, but I believe it was his brother that said he doesn't believe the note didn't sound like John. So that's also very suspicious. And the fact that someone that had willingly chosen to keep going and suffer and go through 7 years of hell just to get through testimony and prove that Boeing retaliated unfairly against him, which he got appealed and the courts were supporting him. It's really shocking that all of a sudden he would give up right as he was crossing the finish line.
Yeah, and the way his life was destroyed over these many years since Boeing fired him. This was a guy who was with the company, I believe, for about 28 years. So almost 3 decades of doing this job. Then he, I believe in good faith, comes out and tries to say, hey, there's genuine problems with what you're doing. People are cutting corners. It's not safe anymore. And rather than take that to heart, they cut him out.
Yeah.
And I know it's easy to think, oh, this company that makes planes, why shouldn't they have a vested interest in doing this? And how is a plane company potentially implicated in all this stuff? Well, remember, Boeing is not just a civilian airliner.
Good point.
They are also huge in defense. I forget the exact percentage, but they do more in military stuff than they do in civilian airlines.
Yeah.
And that raises all sorts of other implications because, okay, first of all, what if all these corners are being cut in what they're giving to troops in combat zones? That's a huge problem as well.
I don't even want to think about it.
Yeah. But then again, maybe everything they're doing on the military is fine, and the reason they're cutting corners on this is to try to make more money for the military side of things. It's hard to say on that front. But this guy went through hell to try to bring this to light. Seemed like he was on his way to doing something significant, and then all of a sudden decides that that's the time to take his own life.
And that's what's so crazy. It doesn't make sense that John Barnett would have killed himself. It doesn't make sense that a healthy 45-year-old would succumb to a simple staph infection. So now put two of them together, back to back, represented by the same lawyers, going after the same companies, and they both happen to die a month apart.
I know PBD just made those allegedly shirts. I feel like that should be.
I know. I want to get one.
All this is alleged, of course. This is based on whistleblower reports and court complaints, but.
So here's the thing: John Barnett's death is still under investigation almost 2 months later, which is like, why is it still under investigation? Is it a self-inflicted gunshot wound or is it not?
Those things are usually not hard to determine.
Exactly.
I mean, they gave us the cause of death immediately. They said self-inflicted gunshot wound. So why don't we know what's there to investigate unless there's something else they're not telling us?
I want to see the GPR report. They do a test on your hand for gunpowder residue. Is it actually on his hand? There's things the police. Why haven't we seen that yet? I want to see the actual autopsy for Josh Dean. Like, is it a staph infection? Is there something in there? Were they covering something else up? It's just very suspicious. And I know that nobody wants to, like lawyers and stuff won't want to highlight the coincidence. They don't want to get caught saying anything.
Even Turkowitz, I think, seemed reluctant to dig into that particular part of it.
Yes.
Which I know was a big thing people were saying after that interview of why didn't he draw more of a conclusion about it. Why was he so cagey? And I think that's grounds to ask that question again.
And I agree. And also, like, John Barnett had plans to, like, go see his mother. He had a beautiful girlfriend. You know, I feel so bad for these people that I think it begs the question is, how are we protecting whistleblowers? These men are trying to save our lives. They're trying to say these popular commercial airlines that we're flying, or not airlines, but these planes that we're flying are not up to standard in parts or in service. So what are we doing to protect them? You know, we posted the story on our Instagram page, and all of the comments, everyone believes that he was killed. Everyone believes Josh Dean was killed. Not one person thinks, oh, it's such a tragedy, it's an accident. How is Boeing or Spirit Aerosystems or whoever's, if they allegedly did somehow find a way to kill
Allegedly,
try to kill these people and pass it off as accidental deaths, how are they getting, they are getting away with it? And so I just, it literally, I don't even know the words because it literally blows my mind. How do we, as a society, as a first world country, not have safety standards that are up here, especially after 9/11? After everything we've experienced, we should be able to fly on a plane safely. If something happens, that it should be an accident. It shouldn't be for substandard parts and service.
And I know we get very conspiratorial around here at Unusual Suspects. Sometimes we go a little bit too hard. I'm free to admit that. But the line here, it's so clear. Of we have these two guys dying under unconventional circumstances. We'll give it that. Things that don't normally happen to people. Like you said, same lawyers, same company, same allegations.
Just finished their testimony.
Just finished testimony. The coincidence is too significant to not notice. And it might go even deeper because there's a third whistleblower out there right now. Sam Salapore, I believe, is his name. This guy is alive and well. So far.
Yep.
We're hoping it stays that way, obviously. Yes, keep him in your prayers because, like I mentioned earlier, it takes 3 data points to establish a pattern.
Oh gosh.
We're hoping Sam Salapore is not the third data point.
This is it.
That proves the Boeing conspiracy. But his testimony is actually about to make the outgoing CEO of Boeing testify before Congress to try to explain a lot of the security oversights that they are carrying out right now.
Sam Salapore just testified 2 weeks ago to the Senate, no?
I believe so.
Yep.
And I don't know if details of that testimony have been released yet, but this is all ongoing at the highest levels, and you'd like to think, you know, as much as you can trust Congress, that they might actually do something about it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Sam's allegations are regarding, like, the 787, and again, something about substandard parts. Again, I don't know that we have all those details yet because it is a fairly new testimony, but I do know I saw quotes in The Hill, and I'm sure we'll have it on VT.com, that you know, praising him for coming forward and being so brave to be a whistleblower and trying to protect us. And he said, you know what, if anything happens to me, I don't care. He basically said, I think the quote is, I'm at peace, because he knows he's done his job to serve and protect people, which I think is really admirable. But I think something needs to change where we protect whistleblowers, we stop production on planes. The economy, like, we have to value human lives and protection and safety. Our safety standards should be much higher for planes that we fly around on every day.
Yeah. And on that note, the drinks are running low, and we're just about out of time for today. But thank you guys very much for joining us, Kelley. Thank you for that enlightening story. And if you guys want more details on this story, Kelley has an episode of our short series, Suits and Sinners, live right now on the Unusual Suspects channel. Go give that a watch. It's fantastic production that explains John Barnett's story in full detail. And then also check out the episode with Robert Turkowitz on the PBD podcast channel. That will give a lot more context to what we're talking about as well. In the meantime, thank you guys once again for coming to hang out with us today. We will see you again on the next Drink Tank for more cold drinks and hot takes with your favorite Unusual Suspects. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like I said at the top. Also, Kelley and I are both on Minect. If you have any tips for me, articles you might want to see on VT.com, writing advice, I'm here for you guys. Hit me up. My profile is now active, finally. Kelley's been on me about that for weeks.
Finally!
Also, for relationship advice, production advice, what else do you offer to people?
I mostly offer production, social media. I did our marketing here at Valuetainment and for Patrick Bet-David. I also talk about faith and spirituality. And our most esteemed director, Sam Elger, is also on Minect. If you'd like to find him, he shoots this podcast, this mini segment.
Whatever this is.
We
haven't put a label on it yet.
The drink tank.
It's new.
So you can find Sam Elger on Minect.
He's brilliant. He's behind the camera nodding along approvingly at us. So on that note, I think it's time to wrap up. So, to the health and prosperity of the United States of America and anyone who flies on a Boeing flight anytime soon.
Fly safe.
Cheers.